So one of the surefire ways of appreciating a game that you know and love even more is to get another game that sucks that you can appreciate it's not. That was a little convoluted, I grant you, but the point is, if you really want to go back and truly appreciate what an older game had to offer, you just need another game to make it clear how great it was. And that is exactly what's happened with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League from Rocksteady, making Batman Arkham Knight look like an absolute masterpiece in comparison. Now, it's no mystery at this point that I'm not a huge fan of Rocksteady's latest venture. In fact, it seems that there really are not many people at all that are that stoked or interested or about it. Notably, Suicide Squad only peaked on Steam at 13,500 players, while Marvel's Avengers, a game which is literally dead now, 4 years ago peaked at 31,000. I don't need to explain to you how bad that is. Like, you literally cannot buy Marvel's Avengers right now if you want to. It's delisted. You cannot buy it. It's that dead. And beyond the simple popularity of the game, it's also just not very good for reasons I outlined in my review earlier this week or late last week. I don't know. It's been a bit of a blur, I'm gonna be real. And so I've wanted to get a bit of a palate cleanser and go back to a game which had some problems, certainly, but a game that I appreciate greatly and I've learned to appreciate even more now that we've seen what the team has spent the last 9 years working on. I also totally forgot how often the Joker pops up randomly talking to you. Like, I just zipped up here and they have an instance of the Joker planned to sit in this little area on the Ferris wheel and talk to you. Like, all over the city, they have little places planned for him to like give off some scripted dialogue to remind you of what's happening in the story and what's going on. It's freaking awesome. Just little bitty stuff like that. I just love it, man. It's so good. Oh, Jesus. Remember that? Like, I could not script that if I wanted to. I was like, I don't think this save has the creature of the night. It hasn't had Mr. Batboy come at us yet. And sure enough, I zip up here and he warps right there. That's great. Shout out to anybody who got jump scared by that. Sorry. Now, friend of the channel, both this channel and the Luke Stevens live channel, which you can see a clip of down there, Nick Tech posted this comparison video, which went viral, showcasing Suicide Squad versus Batman Arkham Knight, and the differences are very readily apparent. I think it also passes sort of a gut check where people just look at the two and they just feel that Batman Arkham Knight looks graphically better. Sure, like some of the minutia might be different, like there might be a higher poly count on Suicide Squad, there might be smoother overall frame rates, console to console, things like that. But all told, I think people's instinct can often be correct with this stuff. And if you're looking at it and you just think one game looks better than the other, that's okay. That can be reason enough to just conclude that, well, this looks better to me. And perception is reality with a lot of this stuff. So if people feel that this looks better, it doesn't matter if technically on this spreadsheet, there's more pixels on this screen versus this screen. It doesn't really matter, because if people would rather look at this over that, it doesn't matter what the specifics are. And of course, there are complicating factors. The fact that Batman Arkham Knight is set at just nighttime. It doesn't have a day-night cycle. It's always raining. The lighting is all able to be baked into the scenes since it's not dynamic or anything. And that stuff really does help with graphical improvements, but it doesn't change the reality, which is that people look at Suicide Squad and feel that that game is a graphical downgrade that's coming 9 years after Batman Arkham Knight, which, to be fair, was well ahead of its time, but it's the same team putting it forward now. And people are generally really frustrated because they feel as though Suicide Squad is not just like a plateauing. In some cases, it feels like a step down. But you know, I want to do like a little bit more of a deep dive and figure out why it looks so much more bland and flat compared to Batman Arkham Knight. And really, it just comes down to a few things such as contrast, black levels, color balancing, vividity, and saturation. There's all sorts of little bitty things that pile into this, but in general, Batman Arkham Knight embraces darker darks and brighter brights, more contrast, and also a lot more unique neon light sources, which makes everything look much more Gotham. I don't know how else to put it. Granted, this is Metropolis. In this case, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but I do think when you compare this to this, it's really easy to see why people might feel that the former is a downgrade. And it really would not take much to tweak this. I mean, cranking contrast a little bit, brighten it up a tad, maybe increase the saturation just a tad, give it a little bit more vividity. And when we compare just those quick little tweaks to color balancing, you can see just how flat and bland the first starting shot is in comparison. But I want to be clear, sometimes these comparisons can be made sort of in bad faith, where what they'll do is they'll take an HDR capture of a game and then it's compressed down to standard dynamic range, which is basically just squishing all of the color down, and you end up with an image that looks way flatter. In other words, if we take this shot here and we capture it and we put it in just like this, sometimes what happens when people try to capture images or videos is that they will take it, but if it's in HDR on a console or even on your PC, what happens is that it flattens everything, like up here on the curves you can see. So what it's basically going to do is it will end up looking really low contrast. The whites are pulled down, the blacks are pulled up, and the whole image just looks kind of flat. I had this happen all the time back when I was selling TVs through Magnolia Home Theater, which is now owned by Best Buy. It's a whole thing. But I sold really fancy TVs for a while, and people would often compare HDR content to SDR content and naturally feel that the SDR content was a step down. And so sometimes what happens is that when the capture is made, it ends up looking way flatter, when in reality, the game, if you were playing it, would look like this, but if you capture it, it looks like this. I tested it. That's not actually what's happening in these comparisons with Suicide Squad, but I do want to clarify and just get it out of the way. I considered that as a possibility for why this looks so flat and bland, but after testing it myself, running the game and trying to capture different scenes, I have the same results. The game just looks flat. But beyond a lack of contrast, there's also a lot of other stuff that Batman Arkham Knight does really well that makes it stand apart from Suicide Squad in my mind. For one, the city actually feels semi-populated. Yes, it's a lot of criminals and weird tanks and stuff on the ground, but at least there's something. There's also some very good dynamic weathering, as you can see with the rain. And watch this. This is the craziest thing. When I jump off of this roof and the cape goes out to form the glider, you're gonna see rain get flecked off of it. Is that a word? I don't know. But you're gonna see the rain get smashed off. See that? See that? Because it's collecting rain while I'm just standing there. And then when he opens it up, the rain goes flying off. It's awesome. Just like here, I'm gonna do it again. Watch for it. Jumps down and then the rain goes. Or if I don't want it to happen immediately, I can just jump and then open it up and then the water sprays. It's an amazing little detail. There were also a lot more dynamic things to find in Batman Arkham Knight. Like right here, if I just swing up here, there's another one of these bodies placed here, which is for a side quest basically that happens while you're tracking down a serial killer that's running rampant in Gotham. Also, what the hell is that? I don't That's ridiculous. And this is something that Rocksteady did really well in this game, were these dynamic events that you would just stumble on while flying around the city, whether it's Joker popping up or coming across a body like this to hunt down the serial killer, or having the Bat Dude come out of nowhere and scare you. Those things are awesome. They're dynamic and it engages the player without the player having to even really think about it. With a lot of games nowadays, it feels almost like the designers don't trust the players to find their own fun. So every part of the game has to be handheld. They have to have a quest marker or objective that you select on this menu, and then that takes you to a place. You do the mission, then you pull up a menu, select a new thing, and you go over there. But back in the day, when these games were at their absolute peak, it seems, just like 5-10 years ago, the designers were willing to just let you get lost. And it was awesome. They're like, yeah, no, we don't need to guide you too heavily. We're going to leave it open, and that's that. In Batman Arkham Knight, there's missions where it's just like, oh, listen for music. While you fly around, if you hear some music that's tied to this character or this side quest, that can lead you to where you're going. So it's almost like something you kind of log away in the back of your head, and you just glide around the city, completing the main story, whatever else. And if you happen to stumble on that exact area where you hear the opera music or whatever, that leads you to your next objective for that side quest. It's awesome. And I don't know why more companies don't do this, because Elden Ring was prime example of this working well. So was Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Red Dead Redemption 2 as well. All of these games that are considered masterpieces leave a lot of this up to the player, and yet so consistently we see studios that even once did it really, really well, like Rocksteady, going back on all of it, as we saw with Suicide Squad, where you can't do much of anything without having your hand held. Now, I do want to say it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, though. It's really easy for us to get rose-tinted glasses with a lot of this stuff, but it's important to remember that Batman Arkham Knight was not a perfect game either. There were problems. For example, probably the most well-known issue was the Bat Tank and the over-reliance on it. This seemed like something that Rocksteady probably designed and put together early in development, and then they just steadily realized that it cost a lot and it was really difficult to put together, and they got it working. And so they were like, well, we did it. We got to find a way to use this all of the time. So they built it out, even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense in the setting. The streets are pretty tight. The puzzles with it feel super contrived, where you're driving this thing in very tight corridors that the Riddler has made for you for some reason. It just doesn't feel like a natural fit within the story and the world that they've built here. And beyond that, there's also plot holes galore with this thing, where the Arkham Knight tells you multiple times, I know I could have just put my men into all of these tanks that you're fighting for waves and waves and waves of them. And then because you don't kill people, that would have made you stop, and you wouldn't have been able to take me down at all. But that would have been too easy. And so he just bails on it. I still to this day remember the first time I heard that line, and I was like, are you kidding me? They're just straight up admitting, hey, this doesn't make any sense, and we know. And that was the whole justification for it. It was hilariously stupid.
Nice shooting. I wish I could be in there, but then, you just hold back.
So that was one thing. I mean, the Bat Tank felt really contrived, and it was kind of a low point in the game every time you had to use it. It was fun in small doses, but especially towards the end of the game, they just continuously rely on it for longer and longer sequences. One of the last things you do in the main story is just a series of waves of enemy tanks fighting them, and it just doesn't feel like a Batman game. It's like some sort of weird Armored Core ripoff. So that's an issue people had with Batman Arkham Knight. Now, the other thing that got a lot of hate and absolutely deserved the shame and vitriol that it received was the god-awful PC port of this game. This was running on a PC back in 2015, and as you can see, this port is tanking hard. This is a video from 8 years ago put together by Stylosa, showcasing just how bad this port was. And for a while, it was locked to 30 FPS. And initially, it seemed like some community managers were suggesting that was because of AI problems. They couldn't uncap the frame rate, but then people were uncapping it themselves and finding that the game just didn't run well, and that's why. And probably the funniest deep cut with this now is that this port was done by Iron Galaxy. Iron Galaxy is a company that's been hired by a lot of different groups to port their games to PC so they don't have to spend time doing it. Rocksteady developed Arkham Knight around consoles, the Xbox One and PS4, and they didn't bother with the PC port. That was Iron Galaxy's job. And you know what else they did? You know what other project they worked on? The laughably bad Last of Us Part 1 PC port. This is another video put together by Nick Tech as well, showcasing just how terrible it was, with all sorts of graphical issues, bugs, performance issues. I forgot how bad. Game's so realistic it actually crashed. All sorts of crazy stuff. This was just a terrible, terrible PC port of something that could have been a really triumphant moment for The Last of Us Part 1, and it just was an utter disaster. And apparently, they also did the Batman Arkham Knight port. I don't know why they're still being offered contracts and deals, because they seem to struggle with Jesus, with a lot of this stuff. But you know what? They did Arkham Knight, and then they worked on this. So whoop whoop. So I do think it is important to bring that up, because some people, if they played Batman Arkham Knight on console, they probably don't have any bad memories of it. They're probably like, actually, no, I had no problems. It ran great. But if you played it on PC, you had a miserable time if it was anywhere close to launch. And right now I'm playing it on PC here, and overall the performance is not bad. It's pretty much topping out at 90 because they have a 90 FPS frame cap. And even then it's still dropping into the 80s pretty regularly, which, you know, is still fine. That's very playable. It's important to remember also that Rocksteady has been a fan of lots and lots of paid DLC for a long time. Now, having swapped over to the Xbox version, you can see that they have a lot of paid DLC, like a lot of it. And this is one thing that frustrated people back in 2015 with the game and in the years following, as they just kept updating with tons and tons of paid cosmetics, which, to be fair, are cosmetic. You don't really need these. They of course do have a couple of like story expansions. They've got this one, Season of Infamy, which is the most wanted expansion, rated pretty well. People seem to enjoy it. It's not a ton of content, but there is something there. And there's other ones like this one, A Matter of Family, set before the events of Arkham Asylum. Play as Batgirl and team up with Robin in a desperate bid to save your family from a lunatic's trap. That sounds kind of fun. Or this one, which is a Crime Fighter Challenge Pack number 5 for $2 or $179 if you have Game Pass, and it just adds some different like combat and predator maps and then some different skins for playable characters in those maps. All of this to say, like, people acting as though it was totally unforeseen that Rocksteady was going to monetize the crap out of Suicide Squad. I think they maybe were just not too familiar because there were a lot of red flags and signs that they were probably going to do this type of thing again. But the one thing you got to give them credit for is that there was a lot of content here. Like, if you wanted to go through these combat challenges as Catwoman, you could just do that. And if you wanted to just grind it out and really practice different move sets, or if you just found the combat satisfying and you wanted to challenge yourself against the leaderboard with your friends, like, you could just do that and it would work pretty well. This 1080p port though is making me really appreciate playing it on the PC. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, I really appreciate the PC version after this. That's funny. I didn't think it would be this big of a deal, but it is crazy. Anybody who's like, no, you don't need to have like any higher resolution than 1080 or 1440p, 4K is a waste. Like, bro, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to look at this after playing it at 4K 90 frames. To go to this is a bit of an adjustment. I'm just spoiled, that's what it is. Headline, spoiled YouTuber complains about low resolution and frame rates. Shocker. In other news, the sky is blue. Oh, I screwed that up. Oh, I suck. But you know what? All told, I still think that Batman Arkham Knight is a fascinatingly impressive game for the time especially. And, you know, if one good thing has come out of Suicide Squad, beyond the 13 people that have really enjoyed it and seemingly are having fun with it, is that this makes me appreciate Batman Arkham Knight all the more. It makes me really appreciate how great this was for the time. And while it has some issues, I think it's another lesson in appreciating... oh, I didn't save before the last one, I guess. He's back. It's another level of appreciation to just remember that, like, even if a game is not a perfect 10 out of 10, even if it has some problems, it can still be worth playing and enjoying. As crazy as it is to say, you know, with the current discourse around the game, there is a price point and a time at which playing Suicide Squad might make sense and it might be worth it. Can I? Oh, I got him. Yeah, baby. I got him. See, again, you can't even script this stuff even if you want to. It's just, you can't. Nice. Nice. Love it. There you go. But you see what I mean? Like, you just get distracted and lost in all the cool stuff that happens. It's just great. These little details, these little events and encounters are what make this game so easy to fall into, and it's refreshing. Anyway, I could keep playing all afternoon if I didn't cut off the video, so I will call it there. But let me know if you are planning to go back to Batman Arkham Knight, if you think that it's worth another try, or maybe you are one of those people that I'm kind of poking fun at for liking Suicide Squad, but maybe you are genuinely enjoying the game, in which case I want to hear why in the comment section below. I'm always interested in different opinions. I might poke a little fun because your opinion might be funny, but I am still interested in whatever that opinion might be. So just let me know what it is. Okay, but the very last thing I want to show you is the PC performance test. I almost forgot to do this because back when this game launched, they had all sorts of really cool NVIDIA like graphics tech that I haven't really seen in a lot of games. Specifically, you see this like dynamic fog system where you can run through the smoke and fog that's generated on a map. There's also like trash that characters can kick around. Not many games have this stuff now. Like it seems like that level of detail has just been completely forgotten because everything is about ray tracing, like light rays and reflections now, which I would much prefer this stuff. I think this stuff is way cooler personally to me than having some technically more accurate light rays. Granted, we're spoiled because most of the lighting is like baked in Arkham Knight, but still, you know, I think it's important to just distinguish that. Oh yeah, and then you see there's oh, look at that. Oh, look at the smoke. The tire treads, the smoke being generated, or what do you call it? Like burnout? I don't even know. I'm not a car dude. But look at that. When was the last time you saw that in a game? 2015. That's when. But man, it's just, oh, it looks so good. It looks so good. It's ridiculous. A decade ago. This is basically a decade ago. It's outrageous. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Thank you for watching. I love you all dearly, and I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.